Hello, everyone. Welcome to I can't believe it's May 2021 Virtual Tech and Treats. My name is John Grabowski. I'm the Executive Director here at MCTV. And just so everyone's aware that we're recording this session, what we do is we then post these on YouTube a day or two afterwards. So if you missed this Tech and Treats, you can watch it another time, or that you missed something that you weren't sure about, you can watch it again. We do these on a monthly basis. Prior to COVID, we used to do these in person at the studio. We would hang out, get a snack, and we'd do like a 50,000 overview of a piece of equipment or a concept. And with COVID, we decided to take it virtually. So hopefully in the next few months, we'll be back to doing these in person, which is going to be pretty exciting. So this one is called 10 Easy Ways to Be Camera Ready. Joining me today on this is Sean Leary, who is MCTV's content manager. We'll be talking about 10 easy ways to be camera ready. And this came out, the idea for this came out of a networking group I was involved in about a couple weeks ago, where I was talking with a few business people, a few marketers who were saying, hey, I have clients, they're really wonderful people, but when it's time for them to be on camera, they get really uncomfortable and it comes out really poorly, especially from the speaking portion. So light bulb went off my head and they asked, hey, is this something that you guys do or teach? So I said, you know what? We do a series called Tech and Treats, and we could easily do a workshop on this. So Sean and I have a brief PowerPoint we're going to put together so that we put together. So I'm going to share my screen here and you should be able to see it. So we'll go into present mode here. So as I mentioned, this is called 10 Easy Ways to Be Camera Ready. So first off, why are we doing this? These are the fun facts, and I love a good word of the day. I grew up with a big word of the day background. So these are two really fun words. So glossophobia, which is the fear of public speaking. And then there's scopophobia, which is the fear of being seen or stared at by others. So these kind of fall into the category of, being on camera, the public speaking aspect, and then the being seen or stared at by others. When you're on camera, you are in a way being, seen or stared at. So 77% of the population has some level of anxiety regarding public speaking. So think about that. That's 3 out of every 4 people have a fear of it. So if someone tells you that hey, I'm totally comfortable doing public speaking, there's a slight chance they may not be. So that's a pretty big thing. I believe the fear of death is, I think, maybe higher. And I think one of the item people have a higher percentage of fear of. And as we know, over the past year, we've seen the impact of Zoom, Microsoft Teams, and all those type of platforms to communicate with one another. There's 3.3 trillion meetings on minutes on Zoom and 45 billion webinar minutes on Zoom. So think about that. And then on Teams, there's 45 million daily active users. So we spend a lot of time as a society, especially over the past year, being in front of a camera, being on screen, talking to people, through a virtual platform. So who are we? Who are these guys? So I'm John Grabowski, the Executive Director of MCT, as I mentioned. I host our Meet the Candidates program that we do, and I host 2 of our podcasts, our Let's Talk Business podcast and our Nonprofit World podcast. And one thing I want to mention, I forgot to mention this earlier, so if there's any questions, please put them in the chat and we will get to them at the end of the session. And as I said prior, joining me on this really fun journey through talking about ways to be better on camera is Sean Leary, who's MCTV's content manager. And he at one point, he was the anchor of our Marshfield Community News broadcast. And he's also the host of our gaming tournaments. So if there's a gaming tournament that MCTV's done, you're likely to see Sean hosting it, doing interviews, narrating it, things of that nature. So we're going to take turns kind of going over some of the 10 easy ways to be better on camera. So I think, Sean, you have the first 2, so you can take over if you'd like.
Great. Thanks, John. So we've got 10 things here. First one is pretty straightforward. Know what you want to say. If you don't know what you want to say, you're not really going to say much when you go on camera. It's important to have an outline either in your head or physically with you. when you go to make your video or do your presentation or speak publicly. You don't, if you're doing a presentation like this, you don't necessarily need to say word for word everything that's on the PowerPoint, because we can all read, people can see what you're trying to get at. That's more to kind of emphasize what you're saying than it is to say literally what it is you're saying. So like it says there, stick to concepts, elaborate on that. If I'm talking about, hey, aperture in a camera, I'm going to get some bullet points on some of the tech of it and then elaborate it without reading exactly what it says. Scripting is very useful. If you have a script you want to go through, that's great, but you can also come across as robotic. Like everybody knows those kids in class, like when they read from the book, you sound really robotic, like you don't know really why. But you can tell they're talking completely different than they would if they were having a conversation with you. And having that sort of conversational manner of speaking usually goes over a lot better in a presentation, makes you seem like you're more confident, and just overall goes a lot better for the presentation. Same with a prompter. Some people are really fluid reading off a teleprompter, but some people you can really tell if they're reading off a teleprompter, and that's kind of an acquired skill with practice. So let's move on to the next one, please.
Sure. I got the controls here.
And as I said, act as if you're an expert. You want to make sure people are, you want to make sure you're confident, you seem confident, you know what you're talking about. You don't want to get up there and just be like, well, maybe, sorry, like that kind of nervous behavior typically doesn't go over very well when you're doing a presentation. People start to question whether or not you know what you're doing, whether or not they should trust you, whether they really think that literally, or if it's something subconscious in our brains. When someone doesn't seem very confident in what they're talking about, you have a tendency not to trust them. So, as it says here, act as if you're the most knowledgeable, highest grossing, award-winning person, the most winningest person, just make it seem like you are completely sure of what you're talking about, even if you're nervous. And display that for your viewers, your listeners, whomever it is you're presenting to. And obviously, what would be the reason you're on camera? You have something to share, and that's what you want to make sure you convey. And that the people who are there listening, I don't want to say believe you, because they're not trying to say you're lying, but just make sure they trust the information that you're saying, especially if you're telling them something that you know personally well. So.
Great. Thanks, Sean. So actually that photo I threw in here is from Ben Affleck from the movie Boiler Room. And there's a speech he does called Act As If in the movie. I wasn't going to play the speech because it can be a bit profane, but he talks about, basically acting as if you were the CEO of the company. So that's why we called this slide the Act As If. And I'll jump over to the next slide. So pretend there's no camera. This is something that I tell people when they come into MCTV. A lot of people get intimidated by the lights, the cameras, the buttons, the set. And because they come in, they're prepared, they're ready to go, and then they see the environment and they panic, they melt down. So one of the things that we tell them is, I know this is difficult, I know, but putting yourself in the mindset and pretend there is no camera here. I meet so many people that when I go to like a business after hours, I go to an expo, I go to a trade show, people that can talk, people that are passionate about what they do, people that are extremely knowledgeable. They don't need a script, they don't need notes, but then when you put them in front of a camera, everything has gone to hell. They lose sight of what they're trying to convey. They get nervous. And these are people that can talk to from a person to person on a daily basis without a problem. So pretend there's no camera here. Pretend you're at that business after hours, with the cocktail in your hand. Don't bring it into the studio, of course. And, act as if you're talking to that person at business after hours, or that person who's coming by your booth at an expo or trade show. Get into that mindset that you're not in a studio, but you're in an environment where you're comfortable and you're very confident. When you look into the camera, for example, if you're doing something off a teleprompter, think of it as if you're talking to a person. Imagine that camera is a person. So that's kind of a basic, simple concept to kind of ease the stresses and the anxiety that go on to speaking on camera. One of the other big things that we ask people to do is practice, 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 practice. Don't wing it. One draft wonders really don't work in the form of television. This is where, the message tends to get confused, where stumbles occur, when things aren't thought out. This is when something that should take, maybe 1 or 2 takes, when it's well prepared, takes 5 or 6 takes. Sean and I see this a lot when we go to do things such as, PSA days, or we film with businesses out in the organization where people, come up with something on the fly, or they've written it and they haven't practiced it. And what should take 5 minutes takes a half hour. So don't wing it. The best ways to practice, there's 2. Look into a mirror. Look into a mirror and do it, which is a great way to do it, or practice with someone. Grab a family member, a loved one, a friend, and practice with them a couple times. They'll also give you some really great feedback as well. A lot of people say, is it okay to use notes? Yes, it's okay to use notes, especially on a longer format, type of thing, if you don't have a prompter available, or, or things of that nature. Smaller paper is better. This is great for the 4x6 or the 3x5 index card. So you don't have this large piece of paper distracting you. If you're doing something on a Zoom, for example, or on your computer, Post-it notes are great. I got a little Post-it note right here reminding me what slide Sean's doing and what slides I'm doing. So it's okay to have notes. Just don't make them really big and, flamboyant, where they actually get to the point of distracting. If you're using a teleprompter, practice as well, please. More natural, the better you are, the more convincing you're going to be. So just reading it off a prompter the first time isn't going to work. It's not going to come off well because it's clear you're reading it. The more you practice using a teleprompter, the more natural you're going to be, and the better you're going to look and feel and sound. So practice, practice, and more practice when you can. So Sean, I'm going to kick it over to you for the next 2.
Great. So good looks plus good vibes equals success. You want to dress for the occasion. The example we got down here is the Kennedy versus Nixon election. And in this debate here, Kennedy famously let the people do the makeup and everything and make him look great for the debate, whereas Nixon was like, "No, I don't need that. I'm a man. I don't wear makeup." And his face sweat. He looked nervous. He had no idea what he was doing on camera, and it really showed. A lot of people suggest that was a big part of why he lost the election, is because people just felt more confident in the cool, confident JFK than they did Richard Nixon at that time. If you don't look and feel comfortable and confident in what you're saying, it's just not going to come across. And like I'd explained in the second slide, your people just aren't going to trust what you're saying. They're not going to feel like they should be confident in what you're telling them. They're going to question it, and you're just not going to do as well. If you got a presentation you're doing for clients, come dressed for the occasion. Look good for the occasion. This is a more casual thing, so I'm just repping some MCTV swag we got going on here. Because this is a more casual type of discussion that we're having. But if we were, presenting, or I was doing a big game show or something like that, I'd wear a suit. Things, just make yourself look good for what you're doing. John, if you don't mind switching over to the next one, please.
Sure, absolutely. You got.
So getting your setup right, if you're doing whatever it is you're doing with video, or I see your question, Aiden. We will answer that at the end. Thank you. Your setup is really important for what you're trying to do. So if we were sitting in front and I was doing a kind of like a vlog type thing, I might have a ring light up here in front of me, illuminating my face, having another light back here, kind of highlighting the outline of my head and shoulders, so I kind of separate from the background. You can really tell the difference between someone who's sitting in a studio like John, or someone who's sitting in an office like this. and the quality of the microphone. I'm sure his microphone sounds so much better than mine because that is a professional quality microphone. He's sitting in a studio. So his obviously looks a little bit better than mine does. And that just to kind of give you an example. Nobody likes, if you're trying to convey something to somebody, you don't want to be like the cell phone camera. And when you're telling some really important information, it just doesn't come across as important or as professional like you would want it to. The lighting really makes a big difference. Having a good quality microphone really makes a big difference. It doesn't have to be the most expensive, fancy things, but as long as you can make things look better than just what I'm doing, sitting in an office and just talking into a computer, your presentation is typically going to go go a lot better for the people who are watching it. That kind of goes back to the previous slide where good looks, good vibes equals success. So, having, like I said, lighting, a good microphone, no distractions. If you're in front of a green screen and you got a cool background that helps with making you look good, that's wonderful too. That's not necessarily necessary, but just, you want to look, feel, have the good environment, and everything will go so much smoother for you.
Sean, one thing I want to jump in on here is the Zoom green screen. As we talked about the introduction to this, Zoom meetings and sessions have really taken off, and a lot of people, Zoom has that background option. My advice to people is to be very careful with that. I know, Sean, you and I have seen some pretty horrible backgrounds, not only just the type of background, but also Zoom's ability to make a background where it really distracts away from the message that someone is saying.
Yeah. Like someone's face will just like randomly just like half fade out and then come back in, and you can see like it's not sure where their shoulder line is, and you just kind of get distracted real easy by it.
Yeah, we've seen quite a few government meetings where someone's delivering very important information to the community and they're missing half their face. So when we wouldn't be missing their face if they were willing just to kind of show their background a little bit.
Or that, I forget what kind of meeting, if it was a school board or it was a court thing, but someone appeared on Zoom with the cat filter and their face was just a cat. Like, just obviously be very careful what filters and things you use with Zoom, because it could really bite you in the butt.
Sure. Yeah. If you want to carry on with this.
I think I'm good with this one.
Okay.
Just if you're gonna, it says, stay out of empty rooms with nothing in them. Having a flat background is really boring and can be a distraction in ways too. That's why you see a lot of YouTubers with like lots of posters or memorabilia or things like that in the background that look really interesting, that don't necessarily distract you, but look a lot better than just a blank canvas behind them, because that can just look so boring.
I'm also thinking in this case, realtors. I've seen quite a few realtors or people in the housing industry film in an empty room, which creates massive sound, especially if they're using an iPhone or a phone as their recording device, and watching sound bounce all around the room is pretty distracting and creates really poor video for people. So that's another reason why to stay out of empty rooms with nothing in them. Let me jump over to the next one here. So talk slow. And actually, it's actually kind of interesting that this came up over the weekend. So unfortunately, I had to attend a wake and a funeral last Thursday and Friday. And while I was there, I heard the funeral director prepping, the people that were going to be doing readings at the mass next morning and doing the speech. And he told them, talk slow. And if you think you're talking slow, talk even slower. Because we all know what happens when people get nervous. They talk faster and faster and faster and faster and faster, to the point where you have no clue what they're saying. As we all know, talking faster might get you through it a lot quicker, but no one has a clue what you're saying. No one's going to understand the points that you're trying to make. No one's going to understand the concepts, and you're most likely to stumble through. This is when stuttering occurs, hesitation, mispronunciation of words, and things of that nature. So talk slow. My rule of thumb to people is talk at 75% speed. Try saying that 3 times slow. 75% speed. 75% is a great way to think about, okay, I'm talking in my normal voice, but let me back it down, because you're naturally inclined to talk a little bit faster when you get nervous and get a little excited. So that's our big rule of thumb here, is talk slow at 75% speed. Eye contact. Eye contact is another fun one here. So it's really critical to engage your audience with eye contact. So how do you do this on Zoom? Well, we all have this little camera right here as I point to it. So what I like to do sometimes if I'm looking at the grid concept in Zoom is kind of look around at the people on the grid as I talk to them. I treat it as if the individuals are in the room and I'm making eye contact with them. Don't stare into people's souls. Don't give that blank, direct stare like you're a 1980s, televangelist who's, asking for prayers and lots of money. It's really uncomfortable. So move your eyes around as if you're talking to a group of people in front of you. That's the easiest way to do it. For those that are doing filming, out in the field, for example, if you're talking to a person off camera, look at them. So at MCTV, when we do a lot of shoots with businesses or for Marshfield Community News, for example, the person who's asking the questions is usually standing to the side of the camera. So the person who's answering the questions is looking in the direction of the camera, but at the same time, they're not doing that direct stare into the camera. So if you're on a shoot with someone with a business or, doing an interview with a business person, have the person ask the question stand directly to the right or left of the camera, right by. So, you're getting that eye contact, that facial recognition, and they're not uncomfortable staring directly into the camera. All right, Sean, we're on the home stretch here.
Yeah.
So we got.
I would just want to real quick just add one thing to the eye contact thing.
Go for it.
The only example I would think of where you want to look just directly into the camera is if you're doing like a vlog or something like that, and you're talking directly to your audience. I think that's probably one of the only opportunities where that staring into the camera, making the direct eye contact really works. But other than that, you don't usually want to just look right into the camera. It just comes off really awkwardly. So shake off mistakes. Don't fear the silence. If you stumble, don't linger on it. Just keep going. If it's like a complete Freudian slip, just go, excuse me, pardon me, and then just continue on your way. It doesn't have, if you kind of like linger on it, that'll get in your head and you'll start making more stumbles. You'll start making more mistakes. You'll just kind of snowball until you just kind of need to stop altogether and reset yourself. If you stop for a bit because you need to figure out what you need to say, that's okay. Collect your thoughts. Brief pauses are okay. It doesn't have to come across like this. You gotta keep going, just keep punching right through. It needs to feel conversational, and the pauses are okay. So just don't linger on your mistakes. Keep going. You'll be okay as long as you just don't trip and fall flat on your face.
Sean, actually, you mentioned a really good word right there, conversational. Think of all this as a conversation, that you're talking with someone, either a group of people through a computer like Zoom, or you're talking through a camera to an audience. So keep it conversational. You don't have to, use words that you wouldn't use normally in your vocabulary and whatnot, So I'll jump to the next one for you.
Awesome. And then know the environment. This could be, knowing your audience, knowing who you're talking to, what you're talking about, knowing where you are in physical space. Are you filming, in a studio? Are you filming in your room? Are you, somewhere? Just know where you're going to be, who you're talking to, and the entire atmosphere around which you are making your presentation, discussion, video, etc. If you're going to film in like an outdoor location, look at videos and see if you can find out how people have filmed there. If you want to set up and make your lighting look better, see what other people have done. There's a wide range of resources out there on the internet, and on TV that you can use to really make your content look and sound and just be so much better. In regards to a presentation, knowing your audience, which would be part of the environment, like I said, that'll make how you present and how you convey your message to your audience come across. You might, if you're talking to a bunch of stiffs at a business meeting, you're going to probably want to be dollars and signs, facts, just, clear cut stuff. But if you're having like a wine mixer or something like that, or you're at a birthday party and you got to make a speech or something, you can be a little more loose and kind of relaxed and off the cuff, know the environment. And that'll help you a lot with how you go about making your content or speech or presentation, etc.
And because we are wonderful people at MCTV, we decided to throw in a bonus one. So you get 11 for the price of 10. So know the sound of your voice. Threw in everyone's favorite TV weatherman, Al Caparilli. And for those that didn't know him, he was a meteorologist, I think at WNDS, and he was on my TV. He had a very, very distinct voice. It was this very kind of high pitch, helium sounding voice, which was really, 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 really interesting. No one sounded like Al Caparilli on TV. And one of the things that when we do podcasting or even video work is not only do people get afraid of being on the camera, but then when they go back and watch it, they hate the sound of their voice. It's either I look terrible or I hate the sound of my voice. So don't think about the sound of your voice. I know it's kind of hard to think of, rationalize, but don't think about it. But also at the same time, just remember your voice is unique and it makes you who you are. No one else has your voice. So just remember that, it's almost like your voice is a brand. It's its own individual, unique brand. So just remember that, so don't be afraid of being like, oh, I hate how I sound. But remember, it makes you who you are.
Yeah. And every time we do a shoot with somebody, every single time they're like, I hate the sound of my voice. Every time, without fail. And I tell them all the time, like, oh, that is literally what everyone says. But I mean it. Like, that is literally what everyone says. I hate the way I sound on camera. It's because you don't sound the way you sound to yourself, because of the way you hear yourself. You hear it through your head, and it echoes vibrates through your head, and you hear yourself just completely different. So when you hear it from an external recording, it confuses you, and it's just, no one likes it.
Yeah. And it's also the one thing you really can't change. I mean, we can change the way we change our clothes. We can change our hair. We can change lighting and all that. But the one thing we really can't change is audio, the sound of our voice. So I know we got some questions here. I'm going to pull them up. And Sean, you and I can both kind of go on these here. Do you need an anchor voice when you are on a talk show or talking about the news? Sean, you can, if you want to answer this first, and I can jump in.
I would say not necessarily. If you're giving the news, yes, I would say having an anchor voice is really helpful, because the cadence in which you talk when you're doing the news is really conducive to people just straight up understanding what you're saying. The reason that news anchors talk that way is because the way you enunciate words is very clear, it's crisp, and it comes across in a timely manner, so that it's almost unmistakable what you're saying to people.
I think tone is a big aspect of it too as well. I mean, your voice is your voice, but also your tone is very important. You can change your tone for a wide variety of things. If it's something very comical, if it's something very serious. It depends on the situation and setting that you're in. If you're on it also depends on the type of talk show. So for example, when we do meet the candidates, we do some more serious stuff at points where we talk about, issues that are going on in the community. And then at the end, we lighten up with some fun facts where we ask people, hey, what's your favorite, what if we stole your phone, what music will we find on it? So we change our tone even in the middle of a program, for example. Trying to see what else we have here in the Q&A. Just scrolling around. So for those that joined us late, so this is being recorded and it will be on YouTube probably by Thursday at some point. We usually get these up in 24 to 48 hours. So Sean, surprisingly, that was the only question we got, which is pretty neat.
Yeah.
For those that joined us today, thank you so much for joining us. We had a lot of fun. Hope you got to learn something from it. Just a friendly reminder that we do these on a monthly basis, the last Tuesday of every month, pretty much. We're working on what we're going to be doing for the month of June and July, so stay tuned on that. And thanks for participating. And those that are watching, we hope you come in. If you have any questions, feel free to give Sean or I a call, and we will see you next time. So,